So thank you first to Prayer at Doss for his piece titled A Song for You by Donny Hathaway on the piano. And secondarily, thank you to Mrs. Storms for your amazing presentation. So throughout the rest of this academic year, we're going to continue our theme of seizing our destiny by continuing their legacy, hosting required sessions to continue this work. We'll be bringing speakers to do workshops every month for the rest of the year. So while so many revolutionary leaders are no longer with us, their impacts continue to live on. From the Black Lives Matter movement marches this summer across the country, an increase in political activism, and historical highs in voter turnout rates, we're living in an era of great social change. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us that the great question facing us today is whether we'll remain awake through this world-shaking revolution. There would be nothing more tragic during this period of social change than to allow our attitudes to sleep while this tremendous social change takes place. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. These words remind us that until racism no longer plagues our society, we must continue to fight for rights and advocate for equity. With the recent passing of John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, it is time for our generation to accept this metaphorical helm of justice. Let us stand up. Let us be a concerned generation. Let us remain awake through the Great Revolution. We, in the final analysis, can gain consolation in the fact that at least we've made strides in our struggle for peace and in our struggle for justice. We still have a long, long way to go, but at least we've made a creative beginning. This is our call to action. It is our responsibility to continue their legacy. We must recognize and work to create the equal world they've always wanted. It is time to seize our destiny. And now we'll end today with a presentation of John Lewis's final words in his address to the American people.
While my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story when you used your power to make a difference in our society. Millions of people motivated simply by human compassion laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. That is why I had to visit the Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington. Though I was admitted to the hospital the following day, I just had to see it and feel it for myself. That after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on.
Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rashard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never ever forget the moment when it became so clear that he could have easily been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison, and troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars.
Though I was surrounded by two loving parents, plenty of brothers, sisters, and cousins, their love could not protect me from the unholy oppression waiting just outside that family circle. Unchecked, unrestrained violence and government-sanctioned terror had the power to turn a simple stroll to a store for some Skittles or an innocent morning jog down a lonesome country road into a nightmare.
If we are to survive as one unified nation, we must discover what so readily takes roots in our hearts. They could rob Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina of her brightest and best, shoot unwitting concert-goers in Las Vegas, and choke to death the hopes and dreams of a gifted violinist like Elijah McClain.
Then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and discipline of nonviolence. He said, we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said, it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said, each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, and speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state. It is an act. And each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself.
Ordinary people of extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it. You must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes. Through decades and centuries before you, the truth does not change. And that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements stretching across the globe because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others.
Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence, is the more excellent way. Now, it is your turn to let freedom ring.
When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And now we're going to open up the floor for an optional Q&A. So if you have any questions for Michele Storms, feel free to pop them in the chat and she'll answer them. We already have some questions coming in. So the first one I'm going to ask is, what response do you have to those who may accuse Black Lives Matter of furthering racism because it is just about Black people?
Thank you so much, Angela, and thank you, question asker. Two comments about that. First of all, if you study and understand what racism is about power. So there's prejudice, which is you don't like someone because of their skin color or their religion or their gender. But then there's racism, and racism is about power. So in order to be racist, it means you have to be in the dominant majority and in the dominant power structure. So by that definition, and I'm shortcutting by a lot here, but for the purposes of this, right, we say Black people, given the history of this country, are not racist. So if Black people have not had power, we've not had economic power, we had to fight to have the power of the vote and so forth. So Black Lives Matter is not racist in that way. But let me say more about why we articulate Black Lives Matter. As you've seen from this history and from what is happening today, and if we look for, as one example, look at policing and the incidents over the country this summer, over many, many years, when there is violence toward Black people, when Black people lose their lives, there's not any accountability. And the mantra that rose up to say that Black Lives Matter is like, hey, you guys, Black lives are not, our whole legal system, all of our systems are telling us that Black lives don't matter. So we're articulating that they matter. We're drawing attention to the fact that Black lives need to matter just as much as white lives do. And so I hope that that helps to articulate that for you. We say it out loud because all of our systems declare that our lives do not matter. And it's to bring to attention that all people should be treated equitably. And no one of any race should be an excessive use of force by police. No one of any race should be deprived of access to healthcare or to the ability to live in the neighborhood they want to live in. But historically and systematically in this country, Black people have been deprived of that. And that's where that call out comes from.
Another question is, what's your vision of your beloved community? How are we going to make that a reality?
Right. I really hope for, well, let me say something that I'm inspired by. I'm inspired by you all. I'm inspired by the program that you put together and the ways in which you've educated yourselves and articulating are articulating the change that you want to see happen. That very first slide in your slideshow, your land acknowledgement and your acknowledgement of the role of Black and Indigenous people in perfecting democracy and so on, which, by the way, I would love to have a copy of that statement, really begins to help to articulate what we want to have happen. We want to live in a place where each person has access, where we don't tolerate, as Martin Luther King says, hunger or violence, and we can live together in agreement. Obviously, I work for an organization that fights for those things, and I would love it if it didn't have to be that we filed lawsuits to get our community to treat other members of the community fairly. But there's so many things popping up in the comments. I'm sorry, I can't follow them and also talk. But my vision is for us to understand and appreciate where we as a society harm others. It's not just about race. It's also about gender. I really feel like we have a lot to learn about gender identity and how we oppress trans and non-binary people, how we oppress and do not provide space for people who live with disabilities. That sense of wanting to understand, respect, support, and lift everyone up is in my vision of beloved community.
Thanks for that. What in your mind is the strongest form of courage and bravery?
Oh, wow. Oh, I don't know. What's the strongest form of courage and bravery? I mean, we've seen so many examples of it in people who fought for their rights, but I think it's also courage and bravery when you just speak your truth. We are in so many situations always in the classroom or in the workplace where maybe we see something that doesn't seem quite right to us. Or we see someone treated in a way, or maybe we feel that we're being treated in a way that's inequitable. And courage and bravery is also mustering up the ability to speak aloud what you're seeing, even knowing that people might not agree with you or appreciate you or support you. So courage and bravery is all kinds of things. It's going out there and marching, but it's also being at your dinner table and being willing to say, I don't think that's right, when someone maligns another individual.
Another question is, how can students get involved with the ACLU locally? Are there opportunities for internships or volunteer work for middle schoolers and or high schoolers?
Thank you for that. So yeah, first of all, I don't know if you guys have an ACLU chapter at your school, but you can actually have an ACLU chapter, and I can connect one of your student leaders with the folks at our office who help to get you set up. And then you can have access to know your rights materials, and you can do events or connect with us. And so that's one thing that I would encourage right off. I would say that unfortunately, we don't have a lot of internship opportunities for high school students right now. Oh, and then also this amazing thing, every summer, we have a summer institute. It's run out of New York. And this, in the summer of 2020, for the first time ever, it was done virtually. So actually a lot more students were able to participate than had ever done so before. Previously, what happens is you get nominated and then there would be funding and people would actually fly to New York and spend a couple weeks in New York at the national office. But the Summer Institute is amazing because you get to learn about ACLU history. You get to learn about sort of the history of the law in the United States and the fights for justice across all those fronts. If you remember my slide where I said all the different kinds of issues we work on. So you get that, and you get to meet amazing people. And so I would strongly recommend keeping an eye out for the Summer Institute, because that's a way that anybody can participate, especially now that if they continue to do it virtually. And then the other thing is we do have our events, and you can again, right now, most of our events are virtual. We just actually had a great event last night about privacy and surveillance and technology. And we have an event coming up in March on police accountability. So you all can always participate in those.
So I think this is probably going to end up being our last question. It's a little bit of a long one, but this person said, I believe it was Stokely Carmichael who stated that those who refuse to see your cause despite continuous conversation and clear evidence are a lost cause. That's not an exact quote. But what is your response to those who have a set mind? Do you continue spending your energy engaging in conversations with them?
That's a fantastic question, and I love that's a pretty close to the actual quote. I don't know what it is exactly either, but that's really close. So well done, someone. Yeah, look, there comes a time when you don't continue to expend energy if it's not useful. I actually believe that people can always change their minds. People can, in the same way that we say that people who've been incarcerated should have second chances, I think that about someone with a set mind. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to sit and talk to them all day long every day about it, right? At a certain point, there's so much you can do. And I think, for those who do not understand the ways in which Black people have been oppressed, immigrants, particularly those coming over the border of Latinx descent, continue to be oppressed and maligned. And, if you can't see it, the evidence is very present. The evidence of the origins of our country are very present, which again, I say it's not about saying, oh my God, I hate our country. It's about understanding the truth, because truth leads to accountability. Accountability leads to healing and to restorative, to being in a place of restoration. So if people can't see it, I can't make you see it. At some point, I have to move on to something else, because there are places where we can fight, where minds can be changed, and where even if your mind can't be changed, if we have to sue you to make you do the right thing, then that's available too. Or try to pass the laws that force us to at least have the structures in place so that equity and equality can happen. So I think it's a great observation. I don't ever give up 100% on anyone, but you're right. You can't spend all along making the same argument to the same person who's just not willing to hear it.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to say again, thank you so much to Michele Storms for coming as our keynote speaker for this MLK 2021 assembly. And thank you to my fellow Impact members for putting on this entire thing. We've worked so hard. You've worked so hard. I'm very proud of you. And we're very happy.
I don't even know you, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Storms. Thank you to Impact. We're trying to highlight the great students. If you can kind of give a shout out of your name if you are in part of this incredible program. Big shout outs to Mehek Asalia, to Sadie, to August Hunter for the great putting together of the John Lewis speech, all the moving parts. I've got Jack in here. I've got, hopefully, I don't know. Ruta.
To our middle schoolers, Mahi, Aditi, D, Manami,
Fierce 3.
You're all wonderful.
So thank you all. And I know I have not mentioned some names, so please don't be humble and say your name. Thank you.
Kat, Annie,
Kat, Annie, yes. Akshaya. Thank you all again. We look forward to our continued series with you. The upper school is gonna have the excited, wonderful opportunity to have Mr. Kendrick Washington a week from today, also a part of the ACLU, who will continue on the great work and great thoughts that Ms. Storms has got us going and thinking about. Thank you all again. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you, Ms. Storms. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.